My wife cheated with our lawyer, stealing $250, $0 in settlement funds, and now she's claiming I'm the real thief in a bitter legal fight over our house and savings. I just found out she's been secretly planning her escape for months. I never thought I'd be the guy sitting here, writing this story about how my wife, Lisa, turned out to be nothing like I thought she was. Honestly, I'd always believed we had a solid marriage, 2 kids, a nice house, decent jobs, and a future I thought we were building together. But the truth is I was blind, completely blind. The signs were there, small things at first, but I ignored them. I mean, who really wants to believe their wife is cheating on them? Not me. It all started around 6 months ago. Lisa started acting weird, more distant, less interested in our usual weekend plans. She'd come home late from work dinners, but I'd catch her sneaking out her phone or hiding her texts. She'd snap at me if I asked about her day or if I tried to look at her phone, something I never did before. Still, I told myself she was stressed, maybe overwhelmed with work or just tired. I didn't want to assume the worst. Then things got worse. One day I noticed her bank statements were missing from her purse. Normally she kept them in our file cabinet, but suddenly they were gone. When I asked her about it, she brushed me off with a bitchy smile, saying, "It's none of your business," which was unusual because she'd always been transparent about money. I didn't press her further at the time, but that little incident stayed with me. I started to feel uneasy, like I was missing pieces of a puzzle I didn't even realize I was putting together. A couple of weeks later, I caught her in a lie. She told me she was at her sister's house, but I saw her car parked outside a hotel downtown, one I knew was used for affairs, or so I thought. When I confronted her, she looked surprised, then angry, and said I was paranoid and crazy. She claimed I was accusing her of nonsense, that I was just insecure because I was working late more often. But I knew what I saw. My gut told me something was off, and it only grew worse when I started noticing her behavior around the house. She was secretive, texting constantly and avoiding intimacy. One night I decided to check her phone when she fell asleep. I didn't want to do it, but I felt I had to. I found a string of texts from a guy named Mark, our lawyer's name, talking about meetings, secret plans, and a lot of flirtatious stuff. My stomach sank. What the hell? I knew Mark was handling some of our legal stuff, but I never suspected he'd be involved with my wife. The messages weren't just friendly, they were intimate, full of promises and "can't wait to see you tonight." I felt like I'd been hit with a hammer. That moment changed everything. I sat there, staring at her phone, feeling like I'd been punched in the gut. My wife, Lisa, was cheating on me with our lawyer, and not just cheating, but stealing from us too. I remembered the settlement money we got after my injury, 250, and how she'd been acting strangely about it lately. Turns out, she'd secretly been funneling money to Mark, planning her escape for months. I found out she'd been lying about everything, and the worst part, she was still lying even when I caught her red-handed. I didn't want to believe it at first. I kept telling myself it was a mistake, maybe a misunderstanding, but the evidence was clear. When I confronted her the next day, she was bitchy, defensive, and outright lied about everything. She said Mark was just a friend, that I was paranoid, that I was making stuff up. But I knew better. I'd seen enough. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and furious all at once. How could she do this? How could she lie to my face and steal from us? I couldn't sleep that night. My mind was racing, trying to process what I'd just learned. I felt stupid for trusting her so blindly, for thinking we had a future. I was angry at Mark too. How could he betray his own client like that? And most of all, I was devastated because I realized my marriage was a lie. The woman I loved, the woman I'd built my life with, was a cheat, a thief, and a liar. From that moment on, everything changed. I knew I had to do something, but I wasn't sure what. I just knew I couldn't stay quiet anymore. My world was crumbling, and I had no idea how to hold it together. That's when I started planning my next move, because I wasn't going to let her get away with it, not without a fight. The more I thought about it, the more I realized I was sitting on a powder keg. Lisa's lies, her secret meetings, the money she was siphoning off, everything pointed to one thing: she was planning her escape. And I was just starting to see the cracks in her carefully constructed. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but every instinct told me I had to act fast. I started digging deeper into her bank accounts. Turns out, she'd been draining our savings little by little for months, paying off whoever she was seeing, maybe even hiding her tracks. I found transfers to an account I didn't recognize, and when I traced them, it led me to a private safety deposit box she'd opened without telling me. I felt like I was unraveling a conspiracy, and honestly, I felt sick. How could she do this? How could she lie to my face and then secretly plan her departure? I was furious, but I also felt betrayed and vulnerable. That's when I decided I needed to confront her directly. I scheduled a talk that night, knowing I had to get to the bottom of her lies. She was sitting on the couch, her face turned cold when I told her I knew everything about the affair, the money, the plan. Her eyes widened just for a second, then she snapped. "You're overreacting, as usual. You're paranoid and insecure. Mark is just a friend, and the money, it's for our future, for us. You're imagining things." Her tone was bitchy, dismissive, like I was the crazy one. I didn't buy it. I laid out everything I'd uncovered: texts, bank transfers, the deposit box. Her face turned red, then pale. She tried to deny everything, but her words sounded hollow. I could see she was panicking, and that made me angrier. How could she lie so effortlessly? How could she betray me, our kids, everything we built? I told her I knew she was planning to leave, that I wasn't going to let her take everything without a fight. She started crying, but not because she was sorry. More like she was angry that I'd caught her. "You don't understand," she hissed. "Mark been helping me get out of this mess. You're just too blind to see how much you've screwed everything up. I'm not leaving because of some affair. I'm leaving because I deserve better. And I'll take everything I want, including the house and the money. You're not going to stop me." Her words hit me like a punch. I felt my stomach tight and my fists clench. I'd never seen her like that, so bitchy, so manipulative. That night I stayed awake, replaying everything in my head. The betrayal, the lies, her coldness. I'd always known Lisa could be bitchy when she didn't get her way, but this was something else. She was ruthless. I realized she'd been planning her escape for months. She'd been secretly working to drain our finances, hide her tracks, and set herself up for a new life. I felt like a fool for trusting her, for believing in the woman I married. I knew I had to do something. I couldn't let her walk away with everything: our house, our savings, the kids' stability. I started talking to a lawyer the next day. I needed to protect what was mine and figure out how to stop her from disappearing with our money. The more I learned about her plans, the more I realized she'd been lying to me every single day. She'd been acting sweet, but behind my back she was plotting her escape. I'd never felt so betrayed in my entire life. Now I was at a crossroads. Do I fight for my marriage? Do I try to save what's left of our family? Or do I cut my losses and prepare for what's coming? Honestly, I was angry enough to want revenge, but I also felt a deep sadness that I'd lost the woman I thought I knew. The next few days were going to be critical. I could feel it. Everything was about to change, whether I wanted it to or not. After I confronted Lisa that night, everything shifted. She was still acting like she was the victim, spinning her stories, insisting she was justified in everything she'd done. But I wasn't buying it anymore. I saw her for what she really was: a manipulative bitch who'd been secretly planning her escape while pretending everything was fine. I knew I had to act fast to protect myself and what was left of my life. The next morning I called a lawyer. I didn't want to tip her off, so I kept it casual on the surface, but inside I was furious. I told the lawyer everything I'd uncovered: her affair, the stolen money, her plans to leave. The lawyer was professional, but I could tell he was surprised by how quickly I'd come to this point. We discussed my options, which mostly boiled down to filing for divorce, freezing her access to our accounts, and protecting the house and savings. I felt a slight sense of relief just knowing I wasn't going to let her walk away with everything she'd been secretly taking. Over the next few days, I started gathering more evidence. I printed out her texts with Mark, took screenshots of the bank transfers, and even hired a private investigator to follow her. I needed to know exactly what she was doing, where she was going, and how far she'd gone in her plan. The investigator confirmed she'd been meeting Mark secretly, sometimes at hotels, sometimes at her sister's place. She'd been preparing to leave, possibly with the house, the money, everything. It was clear. She'd been lying to me for months, maybe longer. Meanwhile, Lisa's attitude was getting more bitchy by the day. She'd snap at me over small things, accuse me of trying to control her, and pretend she was the victim. She claimed I was paranoid, that I didn't understand her, that I was just jealous because she was finally doing something for herself. But I knew better. I knew she was planning her escape, and I refused to be played by her anymore. Every time she threw one of her fits, I felt a mixture of anger and sadness. Anger because she was so manipulative, and sadness because I'd loved her once, and now I saw her for what she truly was. One afternoon, I decided I'd had enough of her lies. I sat her down and told her I was going to file for divorce. Her reaction was instant. She snapped, called me a jealous, insecure bastard, and accused me of trying to control her. She said I was breaking up our family for no reason, even though everything pointed to her betrayal. I told her I'd protected her for too long, but now I was done. I was done pretending I didn't know she was planning to leave, and I was done letting her steal from us. That night, she stormed out, claiming she was finally free and that I'd regret losing her. But I didn't feel regret. I felt a strange sense of relief mixed with heartbreak. My marriage was over, and she'd been planning it behind my back for months. I knew I had to get my legal ducks in a row and prepare for the fight ahead. I'd already started talking to a divorce attorney, and I knew this wasn't going to be easy. The hardest part was the emotional toll. I kept asking myself how I missed the signs, how I could have been so blind. I kept replaying the moments when she'd lied, the times she'd snapped at me, the way she'd looked at Mark with that secret look in her eyes. It all felt like a terrible nightmare I couldn't wake up from, but I couldn't afford to dwell on that now. I had to focus on protecting what was mine, my house, my savings, my reputation. The following days were chaos. I filed for divorce, froze her access to our joint accounts, and started working with the lawyer to secure the house. I also made sure to document everything, her secret meetings, her transfers, her lies. It was the only way I could fight back. I wasn't just fighting for the money or the house. I was fighting to hold onto the little dignity I had left after being betrayed so thoroughly. Lisa's behavior only got worse. She'd show up unexpectedly, trying to guilt-trip me, claiming I was ruining her life. But I saw through her act now. She was just angry because I was finally fighting back. I refused to be her pawn anymore. I told her repeatedly that I was done playing her game. Every day I felt a little stronger, a little more determined to get through this mess. But inside I was still hurting. Deep down, I wondered how I'd ever trust again, how I'd rebuild my life after this betrayal. The legal battle kicked into high gear faster than I expected. Lisa was relentless, calling, texting, showing up at the house unannounced, trying to manipulate her way out of everything. She'd scream about how I was ruining her life, how she deserved better, and how I was the real thief. Because I'd supposedly stolen her happiness. That was her favorite line lately, blaming everyone but herself. But I knew better. I had the evidence, and I was prepared to fight for what was rightfully mine. One afternoon, she showed up again, this time with her bitchy attitude on full display. Her eyes were red from crying, but her words were sharp. "You're just trying to control me," she spat. "You're the one stealing everything, our money, our house, our future." I just looked at her and said, "Lisa, I know what you've been doing. I know about Mark, the transfers, the secret accounts. I've got everything documented, and I'm going to make sure you don't walk away with a damn thing." Her face twisted with rage. Then she started crying again, blaming me for everything, saying I was paranoid and insecure. But I'd had enough of her lies. I told her I was filing for full custody of the kids, and that I was going to get a restraining order if she kept showing up unannounced. I was done being manipulated. I'd already hired a private investigator to follow her, and what I found confirmed what I'd suspected. She'd been meeting Mark regularly, sometimes at hotels, sometimes at her sister's place. She was actively planning her escape, and I wasn't going to let her take everything from us without a fight. Meanwhile, the legal process moved quickly. My lawyer managed to freeze her access to our joint accounts, and I was able to secure a temporary order preventing her from selling or transferring the house. I felt a strange mixture of relief and anger. Relief because I was finally taking control, anger because I'd been for so long. I kept thinking about all the money she'd taken 250, zero in settlement funds that she'd secretly siphoned off, all while pretending to be the loving wife. That money was supposed to help us buy a new car, fund the kids' education, maybe even go on a family vacation. Instead, she'd been using it to fund her own treachery. I also started preparing for the worst. I knew Lisa was capable of anything. She'd already lied so much that I didn't trust her to tell the truth anymore. I made sure my phone was secure, changed all my passwords, and kept a detailed record of every interaction, every lie, every suspicious activity. I wasn't going to let her manipulate her way out of this. I had to be smart, cold even, because she was dangerous in her own way. The kids didn't understand everything, but they sensed the tension. I tried to shield them as much as I could, but I knew their world was about to change drastically. That hurt more than anything, seeing them confused and upset, knowing their mother was turning into someone I barely recognized. I promised myself I'd do whatever it took to keep them safe and give them stability, even if that meant losing my marriage. Lisa's attitude kept getting worse. She would scream at me during her visits, calling me a heartless bastard, accusing me of trying to ruin her life just because I wanted the truth. Her bitchiness was relentless, and I knew it was just her way of trying to scare me into backing down. But I wasn't backing down. I'd come too far, fought too hard to let her walk all over me now. My focus was clear: protect my kids, secure my assets, and put an end to her games. The hardest part was feeling so betrayed. I'd loved Lisa once. Or at least I thought I did. Now I saw her as someone who'd been secretly plotting her escape, stealing from us and lying every step of the way. I kept asking myself how I missed the signs, how I'd been so blind. But I knew I couldn't change the past. All I could do was fight for what was left and try to rebuild from this mess. I'd been betrayed in the worst way, but I refused to let her destroy me completely. I was going to come out of this stronger, even if it meant starting over alone. The court dates came faster than I expected. Every hearing was a reminder of how deep Lisa's deception went. She showed up with that bitchy smirk, trying to act innocent, but her eyes betrayed her. She knew she was caught, and she was furious that I was fighting back so hard. The judge granted my request for a temporary restraining order, and I could see Lisa's frustration boiling over. She yelled, called me a controlling asshole, and accused me of trying to ruin her life. I just sat there, calm but seething inside, knowing I was doing what was necessary to protect what little was left of my family. Meanwhile, I kept digging through her financial records, hunting for any additional secrets she might be hiding. The more I learned, the clearer it became that her plans went far beyond just leaving. She'd been secretly draining every account, hiding money, and even trying to set up a new life somewhere she thought I wouldn't find her. I found emails where she discussed renting a new place, buying a car outright, and even changing her identity if she had to. It was crazy. She'd been planning her escape for months, if not longer, and I was just realizing how much I'd underestimated her. Throughout all this, I couldn't help feeling a mix of anger, betrayal, and sadness. I'd loved Lisa, or at least I thought I did, but now I saw her as someone I barely recognized, someone capable of lying, stealing, and turning her back on everything we'd built. I kept asking myself how I'd missed the signs, how I'd been so blind. But I also knew I had to stay strong and focus on the future. My priority was protecting my kids, my home, and my sanity. The day the final hearing was scheduled, I was nervous but determined. I'd spent countless nights reviewing every piece of evidence, every text, every bank transfer. I was ready to fight for full custody and to make sure she couldn't take the house out from under me. When I sat across from her in court, her bitchy attitude didn't waver. She looked at me with that cold glare, trying to intimidate me, but I refused to be rattled. I knew I had the truth on my side. The judge listened carefully, asking questions, reviewing the evidence I presented. When the judge finally made her ruling, awarding me full custody of the kids, freezing her access to our accounts, and ordering her to stay away from the house. I felt a wave of relief. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. I'd fought hard for this, and I knew I'd have to continue fighting in the months ahead. But the emotional toll was heavy. I couldn't ignore how much I'd been hurt. The woman I'd loved, the woman I'd trusted with my life, had turned into someone I barely recognized. Her bitchy attitude, her lies, her manipulations, they'd all left scars. I wondered if I'd ever be able to trust again, or if I'd just be cautious and guarded forever. Still, I had my kids, my home, and a new resolve to rebuild my life. This wasn't the ending I'd hoped for, but it was the beginning of a new chapter, one where I'd take control and make sure no one could do this to me again. In the end, I learned that sometimes the people closest to you can hide the biggest lies. I wish I'd seen the signs sooner, but I also realized that I had to accept what was real, no matter how much it hurt. Trust is fragile and betrayal cuts deep, but I also learned that I'm stronger than I thought. I survived this chaos, and I'm ready to move forward, alone if I have to, but with a sense of victory that I fought for what was rightfully mine. And maybe, just maybe, I'll find a way to heal from this and trust again someday. Looking back now, I realize how much I underestimated Lisa from the start. I was blind to her bitchy side, her manipulative streak, and how deeply she was willing to betray everything we had. When I think about the first signs, her secretive texts, her late nights, the money she was secretly siphoning, I feel a mix of anger and regret. How could I have missed all of it? How did I not see that the woman I loved was capable of this level of deception? But the truth is, sometimes you want to believe in the best. You want to think that the person you married is honest, loyal, and committed. When those illusions shatter, it's a brutal awakening. I learned that the hard way. Still, I also learned that resilience matters. I had to pick myself up, piece by piece, after discovering her affair, her theft, and her betrayal. It wasn't easy. There were nights I stayed awake, questioning everything, feeling like I'd lost not just my wife but part of myself. What I've come to understand is this. Trust, once broken, is incredibly hard to rebuild. Lisa's lies cut so deep that I don't think I'll ever fully forget. But I also see that I can survive even the worst betrayals. I learned to stand my ground, to fight for what's rightfully mine, and to protect my kids from the fallout. That's what kept me going, the thought of them, of giving them stability and showing them that even when life throws the worst at you, you can still come out stronger. Now I'm slowly rebuilding. I've moved out of the house, started fresh, and am focusing on my career and my children. The legal battle may be over, but the emotional scars will take time to heal. Still, I refuse to let this define me. Lisa's betrayal was a wake-up call. About trust, about people, about how sometimes the person you think you know best turns out to be someone else entirely. If there's one thing I want anyone reading this to take away, it's this. Never ignore the small signs. Don't dismiss your gut feelings. And if you find yourself in a similar situation, fight for yourself. Protect your assets, your reputation, and your peace of mind. Because at the end of the day, your happiness and sanity are what matter most. Lisa thought she could get away with everything, cheating, stealing, lying, thinking she'd walk out with everything. But I made sure she didn't. I fought hard, and I won what was rightfully mine. More importantly, I learned that even in the darkest moments of betrayal, there's a way out. You just have to be willing to face the truth, stand your ground, and never let anyone strip you of your dignity. That's the lesson I carry now. Trust is fragile, but strength comes from surviving the storm. And no matter how much someone tries to tear you down, there's always a way to rebuild, stronger, wiser, and more prepared for whatever life throws next.